we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Now, back to the After Practice podcast with Lake Lewis.
Welcome, everyone, to another After Practice podcast with myself, Lake Lewis. And we appreciate you joining us as always. Before we get into today's show, we've got some great sponsors that we have to make sure that you know about. The good folks over at ThermoPack, they've got an innovative mouth guard, and that mouth guard is going to change the game for a lot of players out there. It actually will read your temperature, and if you're having one of those games or you're feeling warm, you'll be able to look at the color of the mouth guard. It'll tell you exactly what your temperature, your body temperature is. And on top of that, it helps prevent concussions as well. So it's a 2-for-1 mouth guard. All you have to do is go to thermopack.com and see what this innovative product is. And then, of course, we've got the good people over at Sideline Prep. Sideline Prep helps you become a professional cheerleader. If that's something that you're interested in, you can go to sidelineprep.com and see how they prepare you as far as mentally, as far as your nutrition, and as far as even your wardrobe. They do everything to help you become a professional cheerleader. And then we've got the good people over at Chillskins. Chillskins is an innovative towel, and they have headbands now and headgear, but the towels are something that, trust me, I've used them, as I've said many times on this show, I've used them frequently in warm weather. Just did it in St. Thomas on my vacation. All you have to do is actually put water on the towel, and it actually will cool you off, and it stays that way for several hours. No gimmicks there. You can go to chillskins.com, and we even have a promo code on sportsjourney.com if you're interested in buying one of those towels. Now, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on all social media platforms at Lake Lewis Jr. on Twitter, on Facebook, on IG. Once again, Lake Lewis Jr. And you can follow the good work of myself and several of my colleagues on sportsjourney.com. On social media, it's sportsjourney.com. Now, today on the show, there were so many things that I wanted to go over, but I just wanted to be really simple today. Simplify a lot of things and talk about what's coming up for the Commanders, as well as other teams in the NFL. And that's the draft, which comes up at the end of this month. We're in the month of April now, so now teams are really starting to do their due diligence. They're having, pre-draft visits, by potential players that they're thinking about drafting. And I think for the Washington Commanders in particular, the question now is not what are they going to do with the number 2 pick. It's going to be who are they going to draft with the number 2 pick. A lot of people like myself are pretty much in the Jaden Daniels camp. I do think Drake May is a worthy candidate to be at number 2, but there's something to me about Drake May that I think maybe he won't be ready to go from day one. I think he's got a bright future in the NFL as a franchise caliber quarterback. Yes, I do believe that, but I do think that Jaden Daniels, as well as Caleb Williams, who we know will be drafted by the Chicago Bears at number 1, those two guys I think hit the ground running in the NFL from day one. So if I'm the Commanders, I've said this many times before, I tweeted this out last week, I'm in the camp for Jaden Daniels. How do you feel? The question of the day is, who will be QB1 for the future for the Washington Commanders? Another name that we're going to throw in there is J.J. McCarthy. He's coming up the boards rather quick, and I was in Indianapolis a couple weeks ago for the Indianapolis Combines, and I was really impressed with what I saw from him. I was equally impressed with all 3 quarterbacks as far as their interviews. They interviewed really well with all of us. They were very mature in their approach, very poised and very confident in their own abilities to lead an NFL team. So I think that right now, when you think of Drake May, when you think of Caleb Williams, when you think of Jaden Daniels, when you think of J.J. McCarthy, I would not be surprised if those 4 quarterbacks are gone by the 5th pick or the 6th pick for that matter. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And that's not to knock Michael Penix, Bo Nix. Those guys, I think, are going to be really good pro quarterbacks too. I think that they've got a Pro Bowl or 2 in them. So this year's draft, that maybe a year ago, from 2 years ago, maybe people were saying that this draft wouldn't have as many, top flight NFL caliber quarterbacks. Wrong. I mean, this draft could produce 6 or even 7 depending on, maybe a guy like Spencer Rattler, maybe someone wants him from South Carolina. We all know he transferred to South Carolina, and he's not a bad quarterback at all. I mean, he came out of high school as a highly rated, decorated guy. Well, maybe someone takes a flyer on him and sees what he can do for them. So I do think that this year there's going to be several quarterbacks that are going to hear their name called. I'm actually thinking that we're going to hear 5 quarterbacks drafted in the first round. Believe it or not, people were saying before maybe 3 tops. Well, no, I think there are going to be 5 quarterbacks drafted. Again, if you want to make an argument for why each player should be drafted, you can. They've all produced in college. A couple of them have transferred and produced better once they transferred. Bo Nix left Auburn, went to Oregon, and we saw what he did, with the Ducks. Michael Penix left Indiana, had multiple injuries at Indiana. Well, all he's done over the past 2 years at Washington was win the Pac-12 and take his team to the national title game. So, there some ideas and things in place for some of these quarterbacks, what they can be in the pros. But I personally do feel like each one of these guys has something magical about their game that if it's harnessed the right way with the right coaching staff, they could be special pro players. Now, people keep asking me, why do I want Jaden Daniels? And I'm just going to say this. If you look at what he went up against, he played in 2 super strong Power 5 conferences, the Pac-12, and then obviously recently in the SEC. Now, let's not get it fooled. I understand the Pac-12 never really trotted out great defenses, and for that matter, the SEC has almost turned into an offensive fireworks league itself, and they're putting up points. Those Alabama defenses that used to, only, yield single-digit points were having 40 thrown on them at times. So I understand the game's changed across the landscape and guys are producing offensive numbers that wow you. But I think if you look at his overall body of work, the fact that he's been a multi-year starter, the fact that he's had success. He had success at Arizona State, maybe not in the win column, but he did do some things and he did have a pro-style offense. He was coached under Herm Edwards. I think Antonio Pierce was there too. 2 defensive guys to say the least, but 2 guys that know pro offenses. And I think that prepped him a little bit. So when he got to LSU, things just took off for him. I mean, the kid was out there running around, throwing darts at people. And I just think, again, if you look at what Cliff Kingsbury, the new offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, I do think if you look at his background and the guys that he coached, they were multifaceted guys. I'm not saying that a Drake May or a J.J. McCarthy can't be, in that mix too, as far as being multifaceted players. But I think if anyone were to actually give you a truth serum and tell you who out of the bunch is the most versatile, that will be available at number 2. Because if you ask me that question, I'm going to tell you Caleb Williams. But we all know Caleb's gone. He'll be in Chicago. So for me, Jaden Daniels is the next best of the bunch as far as what the Commanders will be looking for. And I'd actually be shocked if they don't take him. I'm not saying that they are going to take him. I know I'm insider with the team, but nothing's locked because I do know for a fact that they like several of these guys. I mean, they really do. And it's not lip service. They like J.J. McCarthy. I know they like Drake May. There's certain things about all these guys that the Commanders could envision themselves running out with for week 1 and feeling comfortable. But I just think, again, if you're thinking about the guy that gives you the best chance to compete and win at this current slate, for me, and I'm just giving you my opinion, I think it's Jaden Daniels. I truly believe that. When people talk about his comp and who does he remind you of, I've mentioned RG3 at certain times. Does he remind me of Robert a little bit? Sure he does. He absolutely does. Pre-injury, obviously. And then, of course, I do see some Justin Fields comparisons. Justin Fields, for everyone that's out there that doesn't really understand, Justin Fields is a hell of a scrambling quarterback. I mean, he can run the football really effective. And I thought that Chicago gave up on him too early. That's just my opinion. I feel like they never really trotted out the right weaponry for him to be successful in the NFL. And then they tried to get him some weapons last year They have Komet at tight end, who's a really good tight end. And then, of course, DJ Moore was his number one receiver last year. And you saw him start to have that light bulb effect. The thing started to make sense to him, Justin Fields, and he was producing. Well, nevertheless, they moved on from him. He's in Pittsburgh now. So when you think of Jaden Daniels, I do see a little bit of Justin Fields in him as far as his running style. As far as his throwing, this guy can throw the football all over the field. He has great arm angles. He has, the strength and power to throw, intermediate routes. Deep ball is there. Maybe he'll have to work on some touch and things like that, but that's normal for a young quarterback. I think, Jaden Daniels, when you look at what he does, off script, yeah, he can make some plays off script. That's something that makes him special. But I think he's a guy that when he plays within the system, he's equally, if not better, as far as his effectiveness. And I think that those are the things that you're going to have to take into consideration if you're the Washington Commanders. And that's why I think that they're probably leaning towards Jaden Daniels. Again, that's my opinion. If they, come the end of April and they go to the podium and select Drake May, you can get all over me if you want. I'm sure some of you will anyway. But I'm sticking with Jaden Daniels for right now. That leads the question to where some of these other quarterbacks could end up. Obviously, we talked about Caleb Williams. He'll be in Chicago. That's a done deal. I don't think there's any inkling in anything that I've heard from any of people that I know that they're going to do anything else. I mean, it would have to be a historical, monumental haul offered to Chicago to move out of that number one pick. I mean, they moved Justin Fields for a reason. And I think everyone knows they moved him for Caleb Williams. So Caleb Williams will be in Chicago. If we say Jaden Daniels is in Washington, then that asks the question of the New England Patriots. What are they going to do? Well, I think the New England Patriots takes whoever Washington doesn't, as far as between Drake May and between Jaden Daniels. So to me, I think New England's a really good fit for Drake May. I feel like that. I think that, a big, strong guy like that's going to need a strong arm up in those elements. It's cold up in New England. I think he's got the moxie. And he kind of reminds me a little bit of maybe a more, thicker version of Tom Brady when you look at him a little bit. Same kind of haircut back then. I think that that's the guy that they need. And if you're Gerard Mayo, new coach there, he needs his franchise quarterback. He needs his young guy that he can grow with and develop with and learn as a head coach with his guy. And I think that Drake May would be that guy if the Commanders don't take him at number 2. So Caleb Williams 1, Jaden Daniels 2, Drake May 3. And now the big wild card question is are teams like the Raiders, the Vikings, the Giants, will they do what they have to do to move up to 4 to possibly take J.J. McCarthy? Naturally, Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State, will be sitting there at number 4. And if you're the Arizona Cardinals, you need a wide receiver. Absolutely. But if you can trade back one and recoup another draft pick because one of these other teams that I just named are desperate to move into that spot, the number 4 spot, to take a J.J. McCarthy, then you have to consider that. So I do think Minnesota is going to make a hard push. I know they recently picked up Sam Darnold, who was in San Francisco last year, and he's a former top pick in the draft himself. And Kevin O'Connell, he's a quarterbacks guy. He works wonders with guys. He had everyone, after Kirk Cousins went down last year, he had everyone playing well. Minnesota was in playoff contention. So I think that, Sam Darnold could be a guy that could kind of hold the fort for a young guy like a J.J. McCarthy and let him develop for a year or two under Kevin O'Connell in that offense in Minnesota. So maybe Minnesota's a team you look at. I know the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, played okay last year, but I'm not sure if anyone truly believes that Aiden O'Connell's the long-term answer at quarterback for the Raiders in Vegas. So J.J. McCarthy could be in play for them. And then, of course, the New York Giants. Daniel Jones seems to be the quarterback there. He seems to be their guy that, Brian Daboll and all those guys up in New York seem to keep mentioning. When healthy, it's Daniel Jones, but is Danny Dimes really the guy? So if you can get a J.J. McCarthy, and again, have him sit for a year or two, and see what happens with Daniel Jones coming back from that injury and see how he plays, it would be interesting to see how all of that stuff plays out. So there's a lot of guys there. Michael Penix, ran a 4.40 at his pro day in Washington last week. So, he's a guy that's going to keep moving up the charts. The only knock on Michael Penix is his injury history. That's it. Is, his history in college of, having those 2 knee injuries at Indiana. But before those injuries, Michael Penix was a guy that I even had mentioned in one of my tweets from years ago. It's on my Twitter now. As far as he would look good in burgundy and gold. He still might look good in burgundy and gold. I don't think that's going to happen. But he's a pro quarterback. Make no mistake about it. Can make all the throws, deadly accurate, deep ball. But again, people want to know that those knees are going to hold up and that, he's going to be able to sustain an NFL regular season. That's going to be the big deal about him. Bo Nix, comes with a 50-50 proposition, if you ask me. Are you going to get the Auburn Bo Nix or are you going to get the Oregon Bo Nix? And the Auburn Bo Nix showed flashes but struggled at times mightily. He transfers to Oregon and everything seemed to click for him. Different type of offenses, of course. So it depends on where Bo Nix could land depending on, his availability. I think a team like the Denver Broncos are going to take a good hard look at Bo Nix, and I would not be surprised if he's the pick for the Denver Broncos in the first round. So again, Michael Penix could be the pick for the Denver Broncos as well. I tell you, like I said before, I think 5 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. Folks, just wanted to jump on with you real quick, talk about these quarterbacks, talk about where I think they land. And, we're going to have many more days to talk about this leading up into the draft. There could be some trades. There could be some jockeying and moving. And as you know, this is the time of the year that agents and different people reach out to you and try to get a different story put out because they want to elevate their clients. And some of them want their clients playing in a specific system under a specific coach. So again, we've got 3.5 weeks, more of this kind of conversation and chatter that we'll talk about. If you want to email me your thoughts on today's podcast, if you have your thoughts on where these quarterbacks will land or should land, all you have to do is email me at Lake Lewis at sportsjourney.com. So you can email me anytime there. Let me know your thoughts. I'll try to read some of your emails on the next podcast. And next podcast, we're going to be talking about the top 5 Washington Commanders. And I have to preface it because obviously they picked up Bobby Wagner. And if you look at body of work, Bobby Wagner would be number 1 on Washington. But I mean, for guys that have worn the uniform already and put it to use on the field, I'm going to come up with the top 5 Commanders outside of their free agents and outside of the draft picks that they're going to have coming in as well. We'll talk about those top 5 on the next After Practice podcast. Again, folks, you can follow me on social media at Lake Lewis Jr. on all social media platforms. And you can subscribe to the podcast. You can watch this and subscribe to it via our YouTube channel at Sports Journey, or you can subscribe to the audio format of the show, of every show, via Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, you name it, the podcast is on there. We definitely appreciate everybody for their continued support. So as always, we'll be back same time, same place for another podcast coming up, and we'll break down the top 5 Washington Commanders on the next podcast. So have a good one. Appreciate you for watching. Take care.